Yeah, so I would like to explain what ZPLS is. So basically, it's Zeus programmable library where we abstract SPV verification from Bitcoin mainnets to our programmable library. And this programmable library represents the portal between Bitcoin and Solana, where the library would tell Solana that it is time to generate a Bitcoin address. It is time to verify, validate, lock, unlock your Bitcoin every time you deposit in there.
Got it. Got it. Now, I asked about earlier about the Ethereum and Solana. They're based on the account-based model, but then Bitcoin is UTX. So tell us more about that, because that probably adds some level of complexity in how you guys are dealing with the cross-chain messaging.
Well, first of all, Bitcoin is never meant to be programmable in many ways, right? It was never designed in that way, and the low TPS and then incompatible with the smart contracts. That makes this job extremely tough. So what we did is we had to put a lot of work to SPV verifications for Solana, for source of Bitcoin, and then implement the miracle trees into Solana mainnets, where we are literally asking another blockchain to verify the POW mechanisms. So every time you deposit Bitcoin to the Solana to the Bitcoin address that is actually being generated by Solana, it's a lot of work. Like Solana, they never had to verify and validate external assets, especially from other blockchains. Well, first of all, we're not a bridge, because a bridge means you deposit an address to a protocol, they take your asset, burn it, and they give you another version of assets. But in our case, is that when you deposit Bitcoin into an address, that your asset never leaves the address. Instead, on Solana, and it will mint another version of Bitcoins to Solana for you to use it within ecosystems.
Got it. So what's been the hardest technical challenge so far? Because I mean, I've interviewed lots of projects that have, that are working in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Met with Citrea, which is the first ZK L2 on Bitcoin, and many others too. What are some of the big technical challenges that you've had to deal with in the Solana and Bitcoin ecosystems?
Well, we didn't build Solana, right? So I
Yeah.
think that was probably the biggest technical challenge, where Solana wasn't following our design initially. So we had to do a lot of adjustments to make sure that Solana can verify, validate Bitcoin transactions. I think that itself is a huge bottleneck. I don't think we have a competitor by far yet, because there's a lot of work and then a lot of understanding from Bitcoin source code. It took us almost more than a year and a half to figure out how can we enable Solana to validate Bitcoin transactions overall. So and here we are, we're using ZPL, working with Solana directly to validate all the Bitcoin transactions that are coming to Solana.
What was the key insight that allowed? I mean, you mentioned that it took a year and a half. What was the key insight that led to the breakthrough that you're able to validate Bitcoin transactions in Solana? Because that's a big deal.
Yeah. If you guys are familiar with Bitcoins, a lot of contribution on the GitHub is actually closed source. I guess there is only core Bitcoins on the GitHub is open source. Rest of a lot of works. If you look at BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi Visions, or BCH, a lot of core work is actually closed source. Thankfully, one of my co-founders, he's actually one of the early contributors for Bitcoin projects, and then he understands SPV verifications, and he also loves Solana. So we had a huge opportunities where he joined our teams, and then we worked the way up from 0 to 1 from scratch, where we were able to run through the test nets. Obviously, we failed many times, actually more than 10 times actually from our test to using Solana to validate Bitcoin transactions. But not too long ago, about 8 months ago, we did it, and then it took us 2 months to audit. And here we go. About 6 months ago, we were mainnets. We were able to capture almost 300 BTC and 80 BTC from retail or institution to deposit into Solana through minted BTC.
That's really cool. Tell us the current state of Zeus Network, or mainnet, testnet. Where are you guys?
We are mainnets already. We're actually V1. V1 where the average time of you deposit BTC to Solana takes about 45 to 60 minutes. Actually, we are going to be live V2 about 2 weeks. We are cutting the depositing time, we're withdrawing time as well, from 60 minutes on an average to 30 minutes as well. And we're actually on the way to V3, where we want to cut the time to 5 to 10 minutes with the ZK compression from Solana Technologies. So we've been constantly breaking the barriers, especially on a verification part. We believe there is edge, there's an angle, there's a huge opportunities. If you send a Bitcoin to Solana faster than you send a Bitcoin to Coinbase, there should be a lot of opportunities in between this verification downtime.
And how much Bitcoin has been deposited so far?
At the peak, 310. We're still growing though. I mean, Zeus is not the one that asking people to deposit. We are adding, I think, as a tech layer where founder developers are actually using our technology to build their own Bitcoin applications. If you look at blockchain applications, it's simply deposit withdraw overall. If now you can deposit withdraw Bitcoin natively on Solana, you can build a lot of innovations. Right now, there are about 3 more applications that are being built on top of Zeus. We haven't announced it. By the time close, by the end of this year, hopefully we should be able to announce there should be about 67 Bitcoin application running on Solana through Zeus by the end of this year.
And so the on the website, there's dApps by Zeus Stack. And so these are applications built on top of Zeus. And then Zeus is the I guess the relayer or middle layer between Bitcoin and Solana. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you've got Apollo, BTC Sol, and Lightning Fi. Tell us about those. And that's pretty exciting that you guys are supporting other developers to build on top of Zeus.
Yeah, so our idea is that we didn't want to monopolize everything that we were trying to build. Instead, we should build a composable solutions that allows future founder developers to build on top of our Zeus as a layers. In fact, we are going to be the first Bitcoin tracks ever on Solana hackathon next year. By the end of this year, to encourage people to build next generation of Bitcoin application on Solana specifically. And speaking of Apollo is our first steps ever being built on top of Zeus. It's acting like a Bitcoin on-chain exchange where you deposit Bitcoin in there and it can mint ZBTC. And there's more than that from the cash side where we are going to enable more version of Bitcoin to Solana. Imagine this, right? You're able to tokenize SPO tokens into many different forms, such as meme tokens, where you own your own weight of version of Bitcoin tokens. Then, Peter, you're able to tokenize your own Bitcoin in Solana in the future as well. There should be something called Peter BTC. If there is adoption for Peter BTC, people want to mint it. Why not? What Zeus ensure is one-to-one lock and mint, right? You're not buying an air token on Solana if it's powered by Zeus. Essentially, you're buying one-to-one packed up by native BTC on chain. And Peter BTC can scale the adoptions from there across different DeFi protocols where NFT or memes, where so on and so forth you can think of.
Peter BTC, that's crazy. That would be cool. I'd buy that.
Yeah.
Tell us about the go-to-market. Now, Bitcoin is the first network that you guys are. That's kind of the first go-to-market network for the Zeus cross-chain protocol. What other networks are you looking to support?
Yeah, we're already looking into LTC and Doge and Zcash. Just by talking about Zcash, Doge and LTC itself, you're already sitting at about $34 billion of idle liquidity sitting there doing nothings. If there's a way to unleash this dormant liquidity, so-called from LTC and Doge to Solana, I believe the next wave of liquidity that coming to Solana is not by meme tokens anymore, but by real projects, by meaning that I think if you add Bitcoin, LTC, and Doge together, you're already looking at $1 trillion liquidity that could potentially pour into Solana just by even 1% of that. We can surpass the overall TVL by Ethereum overall. So, if Solana is a high performance blockchain that's been proven for the last 2-3 years, we should unleash these dormant liquidities from external blockchains such as LTC, Doge, and Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm seeing a trend in some of these ecosystems that have not been participating in DeFi, and so there's a lot of idle liquidity. It's not growing, and I've met with a number of projects that are attacking this problem. One project is More Markets, and they're initially targeting the XRP market, and also the Cardano market because they have not been participating in DeFi, but there's a ton of liquidity there. I also met with Doge OS, which is building an application layer on top of Doge, and they're trying to do the same thing because Doge is a massive. I mean, it's a huge market, but there's really nothing you can do with Doge, and so other than buying and holding. Um, and so I'm seeing this trend happening where there's a lot of idle liquidity, and so there's trying to create DeFi applications that um, that unlocks that liquidity. Um, how do you feel about Zeus kind of like unlocking that and in succeeding in that space?
Well, I guess a lot of layer two so-called from the Bitcoin side, for the last 2 years, we have seen more than 20 plus Bitcoin layer two. None of them actually succeeded. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of stacks. Right? They're probably one of the earliest Bitcoin sidechain L2 from the early days. But people have often underestimated the importance of having the right social layer for Bitcoin liquidity. Because you can have the best technology, but if no one's building on top of it, or there are no users, where's the yield coming from, right? I think a lot of these projects are only relying on point systems or airdrops that are only serving as a short-term incentives for a lot of Bitcoin holders. But if you're talking about on-chain activities, Solana is probably the only options right there that we're generating 90% of the on-chain revenue compared to any other blockchains right now. And if there is a way, to earn yield with your Bitcoin, I think Solana is the right place. And I think without Zeus, I don't think Solana will have this permissionless solution to verify, validate any Bitcoin transaction coming to Solana. But overall, I think Zeus is not here to overtake or compete with CBBTC, WBTC, or XBTC. Instead, we are building more application to really bootstrap these Bitcoin liquidity on Solana, and then layer one horizons as well. So, like you said, we are building BTC stake so earn BTC. We're lighting that deposit BTC into the BTC vault natively without looking into Solana DeFi. These are innovations that we're constantly propelling for next wave of founders, developers, that you don't have to build Solana dApps on Solana anymore. You can build a multi-chain dApps like Bitcoin dApps through Zeus on Solana.
That's pretty cool. Tell us about the reception the Solana ecosystem has had for Zeus. Have they been pretty accepting and supportive?
Very supportive, actually. We have always been building Solana since the day one. We actually joined the first Solana Global Hackathon in the late 2020. So we have been building on Solana for almost 5 to 6 years already. So been getting a lot of support locally from Solana communities, also from user side for liquidity providers as well. We at the peak we have 300 BTC from retail, non-institutions, where it's not a pure TVL plays anymore. It's purely by retail from the community. And that tells us that there's still a demand, right, from Solana side, and it's still growing. The time that I started Zeus on Solana, there is only 742 Bitcoin parked on Solana. I mean, till right now, we almost have like 7 to 8,000 Bitcoin, right? You're literally talking about 10 to 20x of growing for the last 2 years in terms of liquidity ratio. So I'm very excited, with a lot of innovations and applications that we're currently building. We believe that in the next 3 to 5 years, everyone's going to own Bitcoin in the world. And then once they have this Bitcoin in the wallet, they're going to figure out how can we earn yield on top of it. And then I think Solana, without a doubt, would be the first choice.
Yeah. No, that's really exciting, and I'm really encouraged by the fact that there's a lot of retail participation versus just the Bitcoin whales and the institutions. What's the plan for institutions? Is this their requirements are a little bit different. They have regulatory issues that they have to deal with, and also reporting issues, or reporting requirements. What's the plan for institutions?
Um, Funny fact is that actually got off call with one of the Bitcoin strategy company in Asia last night. I'm pretty sure everyone is knowing the fact that phase one of Bitcoin strategy companies, you have companies issuing dApps, accumulating as much Bitcoin as possible in the cheaper price. In the phase two, we're going to be seeing is that how can they utilize this Bitcoin liquidity or Bitcoin in their reserve, and then providing sustainable yield to whether stockholders or believer or advocates, right? So a lot of Bitcoin strategy company has actually come to us saying that if there is a sustainable way to earn yield with their Bitcoin reserve under their listed companies, and historically speaking, there has not been a successful Bitcoin application yet that really takes off from any other layers except ordinal or runes on the Bitcoin mainnet. But if there is a Bitcoin DEX, if there is a Bitcoin focused bar lending specifically on Solana, I think things could change drastically. Is that I think a lot of institutions are very interested in depositing or parking their Bitcoin to a spot where it's transparent, permissionless, or less ambiguity, having less ambiguity in terms of providing their yield. I think Solana is probably the best place as far as I talk to a lot of institutions, and they're all very interesting on the solution that we're providing right here as well.
Yeah. To a degree, you guys are kind of competing with centralized exchanges, right? That are kind of hoards for Bitcoin. They're hoarding a lot of Bitcoin. And I think one of the reasons that works for institutions is because they have custody requirements, which is kind of a little bit, I guess, anti-permissionless in a way. And so how do you deal with the custody issue and also the, being permissionless in that case for institutions?
I think that's a great question. So a lot of entities, they are looking for licensed custodian partners to park their assets, especially with their Bitcoin assets. We are currently working with Kobo. They're also licensing company in Singapore as well. Is that they are providing one of our MPC modules for Zeus. So meaning that if you talk about the way we talk about how Zeus is providing the infrastructure layers, we are more like a hybrid approach in some ways that the custodian part, we work with listed companies or custodian companies that are has large amount of Bitcoin that are currently working with, such as Anchorage or Hex Trust, a lot of these companies already. But moving forward in the next year or two, we are also building our MPC as well. We want to be having this kind of balance between institutional custodians versus Zeus custodian as well. And if you talk about the future as 100% decentralized permissionless, I wouldn't say so, because obviously within this cycle, we're seeing more TradFi people coming to the space already. They are likely the audience taking the approach where the hybrid approach are existing, where they believe in the permissionless part on chain, but also want to have insurance where does the custodian come from? If it's coming from a listed company or a listed company in Singapore, trusted partners, they're likely to depart as well. So I guess the good part about Zeus is that we are permissionless in terms of lock and unlock. So if you deposit Bitcoin through Zeus and any other applications, you don't need any permissions to withdraw, right? So, but on the Bitcoin side, obviously it's parked by the listed companies, NPC solutions. But I guess a lot of institutions like that part, that they don't need permissions or approval to withdraw from Solana through Zeus. But whereas Coinbase, right? In many ways, you still need KYC, KYB, and it's not supported by many regions currently as well. So I guess there's still a competitive niche where Zeus is providing right here, competing with all these centralized exchanges, such as I talked to one of the MicroStrategy companies in Asia that they're not supported by Coinbase through Zeus Apollos. They could potentially mint a route version of Bitcoin to Solana and leverage the yield on top of it as well.
There's there's institutions, there's retail, but there's also Bitcoin whales, right? And we saw one recently last week, I believe, and worked through, I think, Galaxy, and they sold a ton of Bitcoin. I don't remember the exact number. I wonder how appealing Zeus would be to these Bitcoin whales. Have you had any interactions with any old miners?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of old miners. Obviously, they're known for diamond-handed, aka never sell their Bitcoin and just keep mining, keep accumulating more. But as we are seeing more adoption moving forward, interestingly, that I got into Bitcoin sectors, on-chain sectors through Rain BTC. Not sure if you know the protocols. Rain BTC back in 2020, 2019 on Ethereum. So everyone hated the protocol, right? Especially Bitcoin miners. But through 2023, 2024, we have Bitcoin layer 2, and a lot of miners actually start depositing Bitcoin, whether it's TVL play or not, but they're willing to give a try on the incentives part. And I think the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see more Bitcoin killer applications launching on different blockchains. And pretty sure a lot of miners, whether the size smaller miner or mid-size or big size, they will be willing to deposit some BTC into a chain, and then to gain more yield on the balance sheets. I think 70% of the Bitcoin miners right now are listed companies, and listed companies are the only way for this company to gain more tractions and revenues is through different platforms and blockchains. And when you think about Solana, I think Zeus is probably one of the best choice right now.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes sense. When you start talking about balance sheet and revenue, there's a lot of just idle Bitcoin, right? And the
Yeah.
only way to really unlock that is to, hopefully price goes up. And so while it's idle, it would be great for some of these companies, especially the publicly traded ones, to actually have some revenue. Just a different source of revenue, I guess. Tell us, you mentioned earlier about Doge and also about Litecoin, LTC. What are some technical challenges or the go-to-market plan for those ecosystems? And do you have to do much different? Do you have to take a different approach from what you have with Bitcoin?
Well, they're all UTXO assets. It sounds easy, but they're still built in differently in terms of mechanism and on their blockchain layers. There's still going to be a lot of work in terms of tech wise to solve this issue between Solana and Doge or LTC. But on the go to markets, I talked to the Litecoin Foundation and Doge Foundation as well. I mean, Doge community driven foundations. They're pretty excited that a lot of these miners, retail, they've just been holding into their Doge into Robinhood wallets or Coinbase wallet forever. But there's a way to not through a bridge. If there is a way to permissionlessly transform their Doge to whether Z Doge or Peter Doge, doesn't matter. Anyone can tokenize Doge in many different forms through Zeus to earn even 1 to 2% of yield on their holdings. I think we are seeing at least $50 $100 million of first wave of idle liquidity coming to Solana, and I think we're just gonna kick off on theirs. If Doge and LTC, BTC all coming to Solana natively, I think a lot of perps on Solana will also start taking these assets as well. You can start borrow lending. You can start supplying your Doge, LTC, BTC as well. That's something that we've been closely in discussion with Solana Foundation, that we have to unleash these idle liquidities in order for Solana to surpass the TVL with Ethereum.
That would be huge. I mean, there's so much liquidity in these ecosystems that, they're massive market caps, right? That's just sitting there idle. You mentioned earlier about the community. You made a comment about points and incentives. What's the approach for adoption? Are you guys using any points programs or incentives to bring in, short-term interest?
We have 0 point systems. In many ways, I'm a firm believer where those point systems could not be sustainable in the long run. Essentially, you're just selling your position in gains of higher TVLs, and once the incentive is gone, all the TVL will be dismissed as well. Yeah. But instead, I think we took a much novel approach where our incentives are Solana communities. The ecosystem robustness is providing the most sustainable yield. Whether you like it or not, a lot of blockchains right now, the yield is coming from airdrop or point systems, right? So we didn't do any incentives on ZBDC actually. A lot of retailers just want to mint ZBDC when hedge against the CBDC positions, or just like the permissionless solution that we're trying to provide here. So I think overall, if you ask me what is the biggest incentives to work with Zeus or to provide BTC on into the Zeus ecosystems, I think Solana as a blockchain is probably the biggest incentives for us.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk around mercenary TVL, which comes in and then when the point system's over, then they leave and then they hop to some other ecosystem that has a point system, and so the mercenary TVL is I think very problematic for projects. So it's encouraging to hear that you guys are not participating in that. But it's also really interesting that there's still participation despite there not being kind of an incentive to do so. and that's unincentivized participation is huge. And that's kind of how you get closer to product market fit, is where people participate even when there is no benefit for them to do so. Um, and so that's huge. So kudos to you and the team for that. Tell us, like, long term, how do you see the Zeus community? Like, who's part of it right now, and how do you shape kind of like the future?
Well, our future is we're pretty focused on our roadmaps in a way that we're very committed to build more Bitcoin applications. I know we have built Apollo, BTC, so we're soon going to be building Lightning 5, and then more importantly, we're launching the first ever Bitcoin DEX on Solana for Bitcoin wrappers as well. So, I mean, as these more innovation come up on Solana, hopefully more people build on top of Zeus as well. We're going to create this flywheel effects, especially on the Bitcoin liquidity on Solana, that we want to bring more players like we're in our rooms that you could potentially participate on Solana as well. That type of a play that could happen on Solana. I mean, if people are okay with depositing BTC to buy Rune or we don't know within 60 minutes or 50 minutes or so, I mean, Solana's UX is going to enhance this mass adoption where with their speculation, usage, yield, innovations, I think running on Solana just makes everything far more secure and novel as well. So Bitcoin DEX, I think that's something that we're being heavily focusing on. Also, by the end of this year, we're hopefully launching V3 papers. We're able to use the ZK compression technology from Solana to cut the deposit verifying time from 30 minutes to 10 minutes or 5 minutes or so. I think when you have this edge of sending Bitcoins to Solana faster than sending Bitcoin to Coinbase, a lot of things are going to change. A lot of things can change. 85% of Bitcoin trading volumes are still heavily depending on centralized exchanges. Once this deposit with real time are cutting down to less than 5 to 10 minutes, a lot of people will start choosing perps or AMNs or DEX on our current existing on Solana to sell or buy Bitcoins.
Yeah, a Bitcoin DEX would be amazing.
Yes.
That would be, I think that would be a huge unlock for all of blockchain. Um, cool. Tell us about is Apollo, BTC Soul, and Lightning, is that being built by the Zeus team, or are these external teams?
It's all in-house things actually. We have almost 40 developers at this point, and we're still hiring, still building. We believe the fact that if nobody has a clue how to build, we should be the one build it as well.
Yeah, I like that approach, because it's really it seeds the ecosystem. Even though the Zeus team is building these applications, it still seeds it and gives ideas to other developers that may want to build on top of Zeus. I think it's a really great idea. How'd you get into crypto? You mentioned earlier that you've been building on Solana for 4 or 5 years. How'd you get into crypto at the beginning?
Funny thing is, I actually got into crypto in the late 2015 through my first startups. I was doing a VPN business in Dubai, and at that time there were a lot of people who want to pay in Monero. Actually, I didn't know about Bitcoin back then, so I actually knew about Moneros and Zcash, where a lot of weird tokens so cool back from the early days, and that's how I got into crypto industries. And then I sold the first companies, and then started a payment company in Singapore, and then we also deal with crypto to credit card service. That's how I began my Web3 careers in the early days, and then I sold the second companies, and then moved back to Taiwan, and then I was wondering, right? I mean, I was chilling and taking it easy, and I saw Solana, and then take a close look. I was like, this could be another version of EOS, which made a lot of disappointment from the early days. But the more I got into it, the more I got very excited about the tech, about the people. I think at the end of the day, you can always have better technology every years. But what makes Ethereum and Solana irreplaceable is the social layers. It's the amount of people that are committed into the layers, building, transforming, improving in general every years. So I'm very excited, not just for Solana, for Ethereum as well. I think the whole industries are not just crypto natives anymore. We're combining Web 2 and Web 3 and finance boys, and all these people are coming to the space. Yeah.
No, that's super exciting. Before we end, what are some last things that maybe you could share with the community on what Zeus is up to and how people can get involved?
Well, obviously, follow us on Twitter. We've been posting a lot of updates on a daily basis. Stay tuned for the next Bitcoin application that we're trying to build, which is going to be the first ever Bitcoin focused Bitcoin DEX on Solana. We're going to change these idle liquidities, transfer into much more utilization, higher utilization rates. And I'm also going to be working with other AMNs as well, such as Workout Radiance, Meteorots. So I think this Bitcoin DEX is going to be a game changer for a lot of Bitcoin depositors or Bitcoin users. In general, I think we're going to provide one of a kind yield for a lot of future Bitcoin holders as well.
That's exciting. Well, Justin, thank you so much. Zeus Network is aiming to become the default cross-chain messaging layer, not by adding more abstraction, but by letting Solana do what it does best. So speed, UX, and composability. If you want to learn more, check out zeusnetwork.xyz and follow Justin at DAP IO Keeper. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks for having me.